Talking about expecting to play, do you think Jesse Lingard expects to play, Faye?
I think he's probably come into Gareth Southgate's thoughts. He was so impressive against Andorra, but of course he didn't make the Euro 2020 final squad, having made the 33-man shortlist originally. And I think Gareth Southgate is going to go very similar in terms of his lineup to the side that played Hungary last week.
Tony, where do you stand on that? I mean, does it matter particularly about domestic game time? If the manager, if Southgate thinks he can do me a job on the field of play in England's next match, he's in. And that's what he thought about Lingard against Andorra.
Well, he's already admitted, Jim, that game time is very important. That was one of his strategies in the squads. That, you know, players who are in form, who can come in, who are playing regular, will get time on the pitch.
Yeah,
will come into my squad. Now, I don't think Jesse will play against Poland, because I think he'll go with the team that beat Hungary quite comfortably, but he'll be delighted that Jesse Lingard's given him something to think about, no more than that.
Yeah, Simon, you're nodding.
No, I think that's absolutely spot on.
Yeah.
I mean, the team that beat Hungary is the first string team. You see that they beat Andorra, but they needed to rev it up a little bit in the second half by bringing on the main players to get the game going again, to break Andorra down by Southgate's own admission. Jesse Lingard is a bit part player. Yes, he's come on and scored 2 goals against Andorra. You know, that doesn't necessarily mean that he'll score 2 goals against Poland or have any particular impact against meaningful sides, because whatever way we dress this up, whatever way we look at it, Andorra are not a meaningful side.
Yeah,
in international terms, they're a minnow, aren't they?
Yeah. Faye, later on this morning, while you're still with England, we're going to be hearing from Alex Manninger, once of Austria, who's going to be telling us ahead of Austria-Scotland that the one thing the Austrians do not have at the moment is any kind of consistency. You can certainly not say that about England. You know, the word's invented for them, isn't it? They are so consistent. This whole qualification campaign has been one of absolute consistency, near perfection.
Yeah, well, it has been perfection pretty much, hasn't it? It's all the wins so far. I'm trying to count the games in my head, off the top of my head. What have we had now? 5 games in qualification, 5 wins from 5, and that is exactly what England do in qualification. They have history over the last recent times with their qualification, and that's what Gareth Southgate wants. And it's consistency as well, when you think about it, from Euro 2020 as well, because they were undefeated. It went to penalties in the end, the final against Italy, but they were undefeated in that tournament, and they talked about, you know, those 7 games, getting through every one of those 7 games, and they did that. It's an impressive run, and it gives them confidence going forward as well. As I say, it took them a little while to break down Andorra, but when you've got a 5-man defence and then 4 midfielders in front of that is going to take time, and they did need their first team, if you like, to come on and change the game. And that's why I don't think there's too many concerns about Poland, but there's certainly not going to be any complacency, which is something that Gareth Southgate always warns against, regardless of how consistent they have been in qualification.
Faye, one of the big standout features for the Hungary game for me was that he chose to play Sterling on the right, Grealish on the left, Kane down the middle, and Mason Mount in a forward attacking area, which was more ambitious than what he did in the Euros.
Yeah, I think he could do that against Hungary. They needed to break Hungary down in that way, and I think look, there were plenty of criticisms, weren't there, with the lineup that Gareth Southgate went with, but it had worked against Germany, playing the 3 at the back. I think the preferred system for most of us, we enjoy the football that England play in a 4-3-3 formation, and the fact that Grealish and Sterling can switch flanks, you've got Saka to come in there as well. You know, we've got so much exciting attacking talent. Why not use it? But the good thing about Mason Mount is if then you do need to defend a little bit, he can drop back into midfield as well, and that's what he has with his game. So actually, the fact we've talked about versatility so many times, haven't we, when we discuss England, and that's what Gareth Southgate has with this squad of players. So many of them are versatile. We saw the experiment that he did with Trent Alexander-Arnold starting in midfield and Reece James as right back. Once they switched, it was much more comfortable. You know, I spoke to Trent after the match, and he didn't feel comfortable in that position necessarily starting off. So I think a lot of these games are experiments, and it's important, but we are now starting to see what Gareth Southgate's first choice 11 is looking like.
Yeah, I heard your interview with Trent Alexander-Arnold, Faye, as I was driving back from the south coast. There you go.
Oh, lovely.
And I enjoyed it. So you're looking at Trent this morning. What's he looking like to you? A midfielder or a fullback?
I think he's looking more like a fullback. I don't think we're going to see Trent on on Wednesday night against Poland. I think Tony's spot on. It's going to be a very, very similar, if not exactly the same squad that we saw facing Hungary, and then obviously adapting to the conditions of the game, because as Gareth Southgate always says, every single game is different. You have to make decisions within it as well, and if something's not working, then he's not afraid to tweak it. We've seen that before, but I don't think, it's good that Trent's back in the side, but by his own admission, his performances for England have been mediocre. He said that in an interview earlier on in the week, and I don't think the performance, particularly in the first half, really showed him in the best light possible. Although in the second half, he was involved in a couple of the goals, and he was much livelier in his more comfortable position. Pretty
critical of himself, isn't he? Pretty hard on himself. Faye, for the moment, thank you very much indeed. England heading on out to Warsaw, where they will play Poland. Simon, where do you stand on this? A win tomorrow all but secures World Cup qualification for Southgate in England.
Yep.
So you're off to Qatar.
Yep, job done.
Once that is confirmed, once it is indeed job done, would that be the perfect moment to tie Southgate down to his new contract?
Not really, no. Why? He's got a contract to go into the World Cup. Why don't you deal with the World Cup, see how he comes out of that World Cup, because he's had 2 opportunities to win tournaments. He's had an opportunity in 2018, which they choked on. He had an opportunity at home against Italy, irrespective of we didn't lose that game or not. We were outplayed for 75 minutes of that game, or actually 105 minutes of that game. And you look at the reality of it, at the business end of a tournament where you've got the draws that we've got, the teams that we've played, the progress that we've made is undeniable. But what's the point of giving him a new contract now when you know that he wants to be England manager, you know that he enjoys being England manager? There's no race to it. I don't think there's going to be any one of the big top 6 clubs taking Gareth Southgate as their manager. We've spoken about it before, haven't we? When you look at the international managers, how many of the top 6 would take Southgate as a manager over someone like Mancini? Probably none of them. So I don't think we need to do anything. I think he goes into that tournament, either wins it or stinks it out.
He's sacked a few, hasn't he?
When you're in here every day like I am, you come to expect an answer like
that. No, I agree.
Do you think we need to give him a new contract at this moment in time?
No, well, I've said it already, so my answer is no, because I think every international manager should be judged at the end of a tournament.
Absolutely.
I think then you decide about contracts, and it's a very privileged job to be the England manager or any nation's manager. It's the highest, sort of accolade you could get in as a coach to be leading England.
But
so,
does
it need to?
Does it not give you that stability?
Stability.
Many England fans would want to see this happen.
Jim, stability doesn't. If you go to a tournament and you stink,
exactly.
The stability's gone in an instant.
Exactly.
So you can't. I mean, I've been to 3 tournaments and I've seen how it changed. From being very successful in Germany, going to Italy, we were deemed as heroes when we came back. When we actually didn't win a game, we won on penalties. We didn't actually win a game in Italy. But that is what international football's like. The moment you stink the place out, and England have done that a few times over the years, you should be judged at the end of a tournament.
But it worked for the Germans, didn't it? You mentioned the Germans. It worked for them. Joachim Löw, 16
okay, we'll
years.
give a load of other examples then.
I just think there's been talk about this
contract.
The
Germans
there's been talking about the right time to give him it.
They talked about it.
Surely this should be the right time to do it.
Okay, I'll give you an example.
Or maybe.
Didier Deschamps. Done really well, won the World Cup in 18, and now they're having a really... They're out there to get him in France at the moment because Deschamps' team are not playing nowhere near the levels of the ability of that squad, which is extraordinary. They're failing at the moment, the French team. Even though people go, they made the Euro. They stuck the house out of the Euros for a team that is very, huge amount of quality.
That's right. This conversation started when England were progressing through the European Championships. And the conversation started predominantly in the media, not from Southgate or anyone else, talking about the idea that we should be actually giving them a contract past Qatar. When we were looking at the European Championships, before we got to the semi-final, before we got to the final, because we beat the Germans, all of a sudden out comes the claptrap about giving him a contract. Gareth has done a decent job. But any manager managing England, with some of the draws that we've had, should do a decent job. Should have won the European Championships. I don't care what people say. We should have won the European Championships. We will never get a better opportunity, and we will not because I'm a miserable old sod, but we will not go and win in Qatar.
Jim White and Simon Jordan, Monday to Thursday morning, 10 till 1. On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.